I'm Jessica, but all my friends call me Jess. I'm 21 and just about to get married to the love of my life. I love to run, write, and sing, but mostly I spend my time studying. You see, when I was 5, my parents died in a horrific car crash. Some drunk driver hit them when they were on their way to get me from school after I fell sick during a school play rehearsal. I think I knew it was my fault the moment we got the news, but I wasn't the only one. You see, my Aunt Miriam was my father's best friend. They were only a year apart in ages, and so they grew up to be inseparable. Seeing my dad and the aunt being so close made me wish I had a sibling. You can imagine how devastated she was to lose her brother and her best friend in one day. My aunt never liked me much, but I think she also didn't like my mom. When Dad got married, his time was no longer fixed on her. I'm telling you this because it's relevant. When my parents died, my Aunt Miriam was the first on the list to become my guardian. I could tell just from looking at her that she hated me more then than she ever had before. But I blamed myself too, so I felt as though I deserved the punishment.
Come with me, you little wretch. I'll make you understand what you've done.
She grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and dragged me towards her car, where she threw me into the trunk and drove me 4 hours to her house. I don't know if I had any expectations, but I remember the darkness of the trunk being so heavy that I could barely breathe. I cried the entire way there, and I don't think I stopped for the next 6 months. Aunt Miriam was the creator of all my nightmares. She didn't care what she did because she didn't think it was unjustified. She never beat me. That was the one thing she did that I think made her feel like everything else was okay. What she did do, I feel, was way worse. She didn't feed me anything other than table scraps. I was no better than a dog in her eyes, and definitely not worth the effort of cooking an entire meal for me. I was thin as a rake by the time I went to school, but it was never taken very seriously. They just thought I had a fast metabolism. I spent a lot of my childhood sleeping in a shed in the garden. It was filthy, damp, cold, utterly miserable, and perfect for the effect she was trying to achieve. She wanted me to feel the pain she'd been forced to feel when she learned that her brother was dead. By the time I was 16, I was sick in so many ways. Sick of the way I was treated, sick of not being allowed to grieve my family, and physically sick. My body was aging faster than I was. I burned easily because of how much time I spent indoors, and I was so malnourished that my height had been irreparably stunted. This was bad enough, but then one morning, just as I was dragging myself out of the house to get to school, my aunt gave me some devastating news.
Don't bother returning after school today. I'm pregnant, and I don't want you to sully the home any longer.
Where am I supposed to go?
I don't care. Get out, and I never want to see your face again.
She shoved me out of the door and slammed it in my face. I couldn't believe it. She'd always been awful, but this was my home, for better or worse. I had nowhere else to go. I looked back at the house that held no happy memories and decided that, no matter what happened, I could get revenge on Aunt Miriam. But first, I had to find a place to sleep. I went to school, as normal, and pretended like nothing was wrong. My friends, few as they were, could tell that something was bothering me. I didn't say, though. I knew they were worried and had been the entire time I knew them. I feared that if I told them what was wrong, they would involve a grown-up, and that would make things more complicated. Grown-ups didn't want to believe that my aunt could be bad because she was on the town council. In everyone's eyes, she was a saint for taking me in after her brother died. I was always a second thought. The poor dear with no parents, but so lucky to have such a great aunt. No one even batted an eye at how I was dressed, or how sick I was, or that I was depressed most of the time. So, no. I couldn't tell my friends because I'd be called a liar on top of being homeless, and that was not ideal. So, I kept myself to myself, and quietly fretted. Later that day, I was in the library, trying to find information about where a minor could go to get housing for work, when I stumbled across a trapdoor. It was tucked underneath the History of Europe bookshelf, and looked almost like it was part of the carpet. I wouldn't have noticed at all if it wasn't for the hollow sound of my foot hitting it. I looked around myself and found that no one was watching, so I opened it up and crept down the rickety ladder. It was dark inside, unsurprisingly, but it was spacious and warm. I hid in a bathroom that afternoon, after the final bell. I kept my feet up from the floor and read a book until the lights went out. I checked my watch, waited a further 30 minutes, and then made my way to the hole in the floor. The first few weeks of living in there were unpleasant, but I slowly figured things out. I smuggled blankets and pillows in, as well as food and books and lights. By the end of the first month, I'd created a cozy nook, and I was able to borrow books as I pleased. I took my studying seriously. I worked hard and came top of my class for almost everything. Living in the school left me a lot of time to get my work done and gave me unrestricted access to the school's facilities. By the time graduation came 2 years later, I had a 4.5 GPA and 3 scholarships from an Ivy League university. I knew I was well on my way to getting my revenge. They say the best revenge is living well, but I think the best revenge will be living well and ruining her carefully sown reputation. I knew how to hit her where it hurt, and it was with honesty. But first, I had to get a good reputation myself. I graduated from university and then completed my master's. I got funding for my PhD, and my thesis project was a camera that could be manufactured cheaply and hidden well on a person. I decided I wanted to show off my invention to my aunt, to make her see exactly what she'd inspired. I went to her house and met her 2 tween daughters. They smiled and called for their mom, who looked happy right up until she recognized me.
You!
Yes, me. I just thought I'd come by and show you what I've created. You always thought I would be a waste of space, but this is one of the most innovative pieces of technology in your lifetime. And I've done it all to help people in need. I'm on a shortlist for a Nobel Prize. Imagine how that would have benefited your precious reputation. You could have been the hero that raised a genius, but instead you're the bully that left me on the streets to die. I hope that alone haunts you.
I didn't bully you.
What do you call locking me in the shed and starving me for weeks?
Payback for killing my brother.
That was all I needed to hear from her. The truth. She'd done those things, and felt like she was justified in doing so. A year after the initial release of the Abuse Cam, I held a press conference to announce big changes in the product. I stood on a stage in front of hundreds of participants under the heat of the spotlight, and I had to prepare myself. I was about to start the main phase of my revenge, the section that would hit the hardest. I thought about all the cold nights, the fear, the hunger, and the pain, and I smiled. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the start of the Summer Technology Conference. Thank you all for being here today, and for being so supportive of our company and its endeavors. I'm very happy to be a part of the ST family, and even happier to be able to present you with something new. This product was made with a particular group of people in mind, abuse victims. See, I know a lot about abuse, and I know that most importantly, getting someone to believe you in the difference between being safe and being unsafe. When I was young, no one ever believed me. But watch the camera in action and see just how easy it is to find the truth and share it with people. I showed the video of the confrontation with my aunt, and immediately I could see faces glow as they opened their phones. Presumably they were going on social media to share my story. The moment the conference ended, I logged into my news app and I saw my face split over a thumbnail with my aunt's. It had worked. I had gotten my truth out and there was no going back. It was only a matter of seeing what was going to happen as we went forwards from here. A week after the news was released, I got a phone call from the police. They explained that they had taken my aunt into custody, and the social services were conducting an investigation into her treatment of me and her own children. I watched the news that night.
A local governor has been arrested today as it came to light that she spent much of the now incredibly successful Jessica Stone's childhood abusing her. The claim is that Stone was kept in a shed, and food was withheld. These allegations have come forward during the Summer Technology Annual Conference, where esteemed technician Stone showed the audience damning footage of her aunt, admitting that she mistreated her niece out of a misguided attempt to seek revenge over the death of her brother. The death was caused by a drunk driver, as Stone's parents were driving to the school to pick her up. Within 24 hours, a 5-year-old Jessica Stone was orphaned and then immediately dropped into the custody of an abusive aunt. Sympathies are coming in from across the internet for Miss Stone.
Aunt Miriam was imprisoned, and her children were sent to live with their father. All of my aunt's assets were stripped, and her reputation was in tatters. She would never be able to live out her dream of working her way up to Oval Office. In fact, the way things are looking, she may never be able to work at all. I went to visit her in prison.
What do you want?
To tell you that I've put $1 million in savings for each of your daughters. They'll go to college, start a new life, and never have need of you again. I don't know if you ever treated them the same way that you treated me, but know this. Being capable of treating a child the way you did is more than enough reason for you to be here, and to never be allowed contact with your children again. You disgust me, and I hope you rot in prison. Please subscribe. Hi, my name is Claire, and my family is very toxic. For starters, my parents would constantly try to pit my siblings against each other. We were forced to compete for their love and attention. If one of us got lower grades than the other two, they would belittle them and make them feel inferior. For sports, whoever did the worst would be yelled at and usually punished by being slapped. My parents thought that this would toughen us up and that by being forced to compete with one another, that it would make us stronger and more resilient, but all it really did was make us feel unloved and untrusting of each other. However, my younger brother Josh decided one day that he would no longer play our parents' insane games, and not long after I followed suit, which made both our mother and father very upset with us. They could tell that they were losing power over us, and so they doubled their efforts, and while it stung every time that they would abuse us, both of us decided that we would stick to our guns and chose to support each other and just ignore them. We figured that we would only have to put up with them until we were 18, and then we would be on our own and would no longer have to put up with them. Our eldest sister, Vanessa, though, continued to berate us and did her best to keep trying to win our parents' love. She hadn't come to realize that they didn't love us and were only playing games with our love and attention. Once our parents realized that my brother and I would no longer compete with Vanessa for their approval, they began to focus only on Vanessa, and no matter what she asked for, they would give it to her. She had the nicest of clothes and had every toy she could ever want. And when she got older, they would pay to have her in every class or play on any sports team that she wanted to join. My mom will neglect me and won't even buy me pads. My parents never yelled at Vanessa and will celebrate all her birthdays, whereas I and my Josh will get nothing. It was so incredibly unfair, as Josh and I had to struggle for everything that we needed or wanted. Mom and Dad, can I please have $20 so that I can join the science team after school? The money will be used to buy materials to do experiments with. It will really help me to do better in chemistry and biology.
That's outrageous! We aren't made of money. If you want the money, then you should get a job.
But I'm not old enough to get a job.
Shut up. Girls in other countries your age are married and working. You are just lazy.
Oh, Daddy, I need $100.
Of course, my dear. Here you are. Have lots of fun.
But you didn't even ask what it was for. That's so unfair.
How dare you talk back to me? Go to your room. You're grounded.
No matter what I asked for, it would always end that way. For years, Josh and I struggled while Vanessa was given everything that she ever needed. That is until I graduated from high school. I knew that our parents wouldn't spare a single dollar for my college, and so I just applied for financial assistance and was accepted. Leaving for school was such a wonderful relief, although I felt guilty that Josh still had to endure a few more years living in our parents' home before he too could leave and go to school. After I graduated college, I began looking for work and managed to find work as a freelance writer. The pay wasn't much, but it allowed me to get my own place. And so I moved out from my parents' home and felt such relief knowing that I wouldn't have to live with them and their abuse anymore. When I was about leaving our house, my mom was so happy and said,
Make sure to send us money, okay? Now that you going, Vanessa can use your room to keep some of her dresses.
I didn't say anything and just left. A couple of years later, Josh graduated from business college, and I offered for him to move in with me.
Are you sure, Claire? I wouldn't want to impose.
Of course! Besides, it wouldn't be permanent. It would just be until you can get yourself settled. Plus, I feel guilty for leaving you alone in that house with our terrible parents.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I do appreciate it. I just need to find myself a job like yours and start making some money.
Well, I don't make that much. I would love to have the book I wrote publish it, though. Maybe that would make me rich. The two of us laughed, but then Josh got very serious.
Well, why don't you try to do it actually? As a thank you for letting me stay with you, I could help find companies interested in publishing your book, and I could even find you signing gigs. I could be like your manager. What do you say?
I mean, it didn't hurt, and if Josh really wanted to, I was willing to trust him and let him give it a try. And so, he got to work finding a company to make my book a reality, and after a few rejections, he found one that was interested. They gave me a huge signing bonus and offered me a contract to write 5 more books. I still have no idea how Josh managed to get that amazing deal, but it was the start of my career as an author. Josh was also offered a job by the company as well. A couple years later, I managed to buy myself a large house and had Josh move in with me while he looked for one for himself. It was a dream come true, and the two of us were so happy. That is until Vanessa came to visit.
How on earth did you two losers afford such an amazing home? Did you become criminals or something?
No, Vanessa. Claire is an amazing author, and I've been managing her. We're adults now. Why are you still so mean? You do realize that Mom and Dad aren't even here, right? There's no one here for you to impress.
Oh, them. Yeah, I don't have a use for them anymore. Listen, when can I move in?
What do you mean?
Well, Mom and Dad don't have any more money and they're being too strict, so obviously I need to move in with you two losers.
As it turned out, Vanessa had tried several times to go to college and had our parents pay for classes every time. When she failed, she would then just apply and take a different course, racking up massive amounts of debt as she did so. Since our parents were paying, they began to get overwhelmed with the debt and could barely afford their mortgage, let alone the growing debt that Vanessa was accumulating. Finally, they told her that she needed to start paying for things as well, and that they would force her to live on a very strict budget. Vanessa, however, refused to do so, and had decided that either Josh or I would just let her move in with us so that she could continue to live like she had gotten used to.
You're family and you both have money, so it's your responsibility to help me.
No, Vanessa, we don't need to help you. You're an adult. You need to figure this out on your own. Vanessa began to start crying and began to get angry. She couldn't understand why we wouldn't just give in like our parents always used to, and after asking her to leave a dozen times, we were forced to threaten to call the police and have her removed as a trespasser. After she left, the two of us called up our parents to see what had happened. They were incredibly desperate and begged us both to help them, or else they would have to file for bankruptcy and end up losing their house.
Please, you two need to help us. Your older sister has bankrupted us and we are desperate.
And why would we? You were terrible to us. You gave Vanessa everything and never cared about us until now that we've made it.
Yes, exactly. The two of you are rich now. You can help us out.
Are you insane? Nope, you never helped us. We had to do everything just the two of us. And why would we? You were terrible to us. You gave Vanessa everything and never cared about us until now that we've made it.
And so, we hung up on them. Part of me felt a bit guilty, but they had chosen to support only Vanessa, and they could have put a stop to enabling her bad behavior at any time and hadn't. It wasn't our fault that they didn't want to be responsible parents. After we hung up the phone, though, Josh began to grin devilishly, and I couldn't help but wonder why. A few weeks later, he invited me to go for a drive with him. Where are we going?
I have a wonderful surprise. I finally found a house that I wanted to buy.
As he spoke, we pulled up in front of our parents' house. Josh had managed to buy it once the bank repossessed it from our parents. Why did you buy it?
Revenge. So many bad memories were made in this place for us, and I wanted to give the house a chance to create some good memories for me instead.
But what about Vanessa and our parents? As it turned out, Josh had filed a restraining order against them so that they couldn't go anywhere near his house. As it was, Vanessa and our parents had been forced to move into a tiny bachelor pad together. Every so often, they would try to call and beg us for money, but we would just let their calls go to voicemail and never answered them. The three of them were miserable and constantly fought but had no choice but to continue to live together as they tried to climb their way out of debt. Not long after moving into his new house, Josh met a girl and ended up getting married and having 3 wonderful children there, filling the home with good memories. Not long after his first child was born, I too got married, and I'm happy to say that I am pregnant and am expecting my daughter to be born any day. Both Josh and I would never have guessed that we would escape from our toxic family, but we're truly glad that we did, and we're given the chance to make a whole new family, even if we had to cut out our parents and older sister to do it. Thanks for watching. Please like and share the video.
Some of you might think I'm exaggerating when I say this, but I'd rather take my orphanage back than Aunt Nancy ever again. Sure, the children's home was physically abusive, but Nancy was cruel in both the physical and emotional way. She would try to avoid me as much as possible, even though she was my literal guardian. And whenever she did decide to interact with me, it wasn't pleasant. Hi everybody, I'm Mateo, and I have quite a fun story to tell everybody. This is the story on how I got revenge on my aunt, who treated me absolutely horribly. I still have no regrets about what happened to her. I'll just get right to it now. So I'm from a country in South America. I grew up in a home for kids since my parents had died when I was young. The workers always neglected everyone's basic needs and hit us often. I still have scars from the amount of times they lashed out on me. One day, these missionaries from America visited our region, and a couple that was on the trip came by and wanted to adopt me. So, through a lot of legal procedures, I became a US citizen, and I was flown out of my home country. It was a very hard change for me now, because I was already 9 when my new parents adopted me. I had to learn English, which was difficult and even more embarrassing, since everyone else around me has spoken English for their entire lives. There were also quite the cultural differences which I had to adjust to, and having parents now in general was something I had to quickly get used to. Luckily, my new parents were extremely patient and kind with me, which I was grateful for. We made many memories together, but again, my mom and dad passed away 5 years later. They were killed instantly as a result of a car crash, which absolutely devastated me. I was then sent to live with my Aunt Nancy, who was my dad's sister. Some of you might think I'm exaggerating when I say this, but I'd rather take my orphanage back than Aunt Nancy ever again. Sure, the children's home was physically abusive, but Nancy was cruel in both the physical and emotional way. She would try to avoid me as much as possible, even though she was my literal guardian. And whenever she did decide to interact with me, it wasn't pleasant.
Hey, Matt.
See?
Don't say that stupid word. You're in America. Speak English.
Sorry, Auntie.
God, my brother really made the worst decision when it came to having a kid. He's adopted, not even from this country, ugly and stupid. I was fine with it as long as I didn't have to deal with it, but now my brother has to just die and leave me this thing to look over.
Sorry, Auntie.
Can you shut up and trim the bushes already? I'm tired of your weird accent.
Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad, my ass. I'm not your mommy, Mateo. You're not even purely part of the family, so I will treat you as such.
Nancy would constantly comment on my accent and basically anything that was identifiable to my culture. She hated my curly hair and would make me cut it short so it was straighter. She also grimaced at my tanned skin tone, and according to her, I shouldn't go outside much since I was brown enough. Also, my aunt would beat me a lot for either no reason or one that doesn't even make any sense. She noticed that I would get scared if she ever held up slippers or a belt and used this to her advantage.
Mateo, do you think the length of this belt is too long?
It's fine.
Oh, don't tell me you're scared of a belt, are you? I'm gonna have so much fun scaring you.
Please don't. Nancy?
Come on, don't be such a wimp.
The fact that Aunt Nancy was making fun of my past trauma was pretty aggravating. I tried hard to let her off the hook with every new thing she did or said, and it was becoming increasingly hard to not yell back at her as the years went on. She even berated me in front of my friends from school.
You've been living here for like 7 years now. Why is your accent still so terrible?
Sorry, I've been practicing a lot.
Well, obviously your Spanish friends you have with you are keeping you from talking normally.
Auntie Nancy, stop saying that.
So are you denying my First Amendment rights now? I can't freely say what I believe?
No, but by this point, I was so done with my aunt. I apologized to my friends, and my head boiled with anger as I thought about all that Nancy had said. One day, Nancy took me to my grandparents' place since she had some sort of salon appointment. I had visited them almost every week with my parents, but ever since living with Nancy, I'd see them only about 6 times a year. Grandpa and Grandma were some of the sweetest people that I'd ever met, and I knew that I could tell them anything. So I began to complain to them about everything that I'd been going through at home with Nancy. I went into tiny details ranging from her racist remarks and distaste towards adoptees to the manual labor she forced me to do. When I was finally done ranting about my situation, both of my grandparents were fuming in absolute fury.
Mateo, I promise we will help you. We have a lot of secrets we've been keeping, but I think it'll come to our advantage now.
Honey, I assure that Nancy will never lay a finger on you again.
Thank you. My grandparents soon revealed some shocking secrets about their life, and they were right. I really could use a lot of the stuff as weapons against my evil aunt. The next time Nancy started acting incredibly arrogant to me again, I knew it was the perfect time to work out my revenge. Aunt Nancy, is it okay if I go to the park with my friends for one of their birthdays?
I really wish your birthday could come. Then I could just kick you out already, filthy immigrant boy.
Well, I think you're the one that should be kicked out.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't Grandpa and Grandma own this house? I think they have all the right to be able to kick someone like you out.
What in the hell is a stupid kid like you talking about?
Well, you've acted very horribly to me for the past 3 years by insulting my culture, my appearance, and the fact that Mom and Dad had adopted me. And I know now that you don't even own this house because your parents paid for every penny.
That's not true. Stop lying. I'll call them right now.
I watched as Nancy quickly dialed my grandparents' number, and my grandma picked up. Nancy began to yell about how I was a complete liar who was just trying to embarrass and humiliate her in front of everyone I knew.
Mom! Your so-called grandson keeps trying to assault me and claims that you bought my house. Mommy, tell him it's not true. Hurry! Just calm down now. We're almost at your door. Sweetheart, you know it's true. Mom? What? No, I paid for it, Mom.
Stop pretending. We wrote the check for the whole house. Nancy, it's time to also reveal the fact that you're adopted. Go ahead. Tell Mateo that you're adopted.
Dad, how can you just betray me like this?
How do you think it's right that you can just emotionally and physically hurt an adoptee from simply being loved by people other than their biological parents? We've loved you for all of your life. So how would you feel if we treated you so horribly like you have treated Mateo?
I've always been so nice to him. I'm your daughter and he's not. What a hypocrite. If he's not your brother's son, then you're not our daughter. It's time to get out of the house. But Mom, don't make me call the cops on you. We've removed you from our will and Mateo will be receiving all of our inheritance after we pass. This isn't fair. This isn't fair. I'm gonna kill you, Mom.
With that, Nancy lunged at my grandma angrily. She hit the ground, and I quickly was able to pry my aunt off of her and restrain her while Grandpa called the police. The police very quickly showed up and made sure that my grandma was okay from being pushed onto the floor. Luckily, my grandma only ended with a sore hip. On the other hand, Nancy was completely kicked out of the house and also charged with assault and resisting arrest, since she'd kicked the cops multiple times before being tased and forced into the police car. I'm not sure what happened to her, since my grandparents dealt with all of the illegal technicalities, but it's been a few years, and I haven't seen or heard from my aunt. Grandma and Grandpa gifted me Nancy's home, and I was ecstatic at this news. I did rent the house out for a few years when I went to college. I've just come home from university, and my grandparents are still doing very well. They say they have no regrets on what they did since every child deserves to have love, and she just didn't understand that. Thanks for listening.